Hello guys, buckle up for my first podcast today. I am from Group 7. Today's topic is entitled on awareness about how the COVID-19 pandemic has and still can affect the travel industry. Before we begin our podcast, my name is Anand. I'm the host for this episode of the podcast. In this episode of our podcast, I'm very grateful because we have a lot of interesting guests. Let me introduce our guests. First and foremost, we have Mr. Vinesh, Mrs. Divyasri, and Mr. Shavin. Can we have our guests to introduce themselves and what do they do?
Hello everyone, my name is Avinesh. I'm a travel agent.
Hi guys, my name is Divyasri and I'm independent.
Hi, my name is Shavin. I'm a foreigner and a tourist in Malaysia.
Looks like we have many interesting guests today, and thank you for coming to my podcast as a guest today. So today, as we all know that tourism is vital for successful economy around the world, there are several benefits of tourism of host destination. Tourism boosts the revenue of economy, creates jobs opportunities, develops the infrastructure of the country, and facilitates a sense of cultural exchange between foreigners and citizens. The severe outbreak of the pandemic made it demanding the country to implement the movement. Control order, control order also known as MCO, is an effort to stem the increasing number of COVID-19 cases in Malaysia. Tonight's topic is awareness about how COVID pandemic affect the travel industry. I'm going to start with our first guest, Mr. Vinesh. As we all know that the COVID pandemic has affected tourism a lot. Hence, how long do you think it will take for the tourism sector to recover?
What I know is that the tourism receipts are not likely to recover to levels seen in 2019 until 2023. According to the current IMF research on tourism in a post-pandemic world, visitor arrival decreased by more than 65% in the first half of 2020, with relatively close since to April compared to 8% even during global financial crisis and 17% during the SARS epidemic of 2019.
Um, that's that's very good fact we have got there. Domestic tourism has been severely harmed by the containment measures, despite the fact that international tourism has received a lot of attention due to the availability of more data. Why do you think this is so, Mr. Vinesh?
Actually, that's a wonderful question, host. Given the uncertain prospect for international travel, domestic tourism is projected to play a key role in leading the initial recovery phase. Countries whose domestic tourism are already responsible for substantial portion of the tourism economy are more likely to see a faster rebound than countries that rely largely on foreign tourism.
Very precious answer we have gained. Last but not least, what are the opinions on bettering the tourism sector during the pandemic?
Tourism is showing signs of recovery with quarantines lessening and schedules resuming as last time itself. But we can't go back to the business as usual if we want to have the sector to be positive factor for both economy and environment. However, there are four key factors on recovery, which are local tourism, ecological protection, improved infrastructure, and rethinking of flying.
Okay, so we all set a big round of applause for our travel agent, Mr. Vinesh. So we'll go to the next guest, which is Mrs. Divyasri. Mrs. Divyasri, can you explain how COVID-19 affect on entrepreneur during the pandemic in the travel section?
Thank you, Mr. Anand, for the question. As we know that as an entrepreneur, some of us need to go to get a good supplier for our product. More than that, we also need to survey the market because some of our entrepreneurs are opening their business worldwide. COVID-19 has affected a few of the entrepreneurs in their business procedure. They may be lost if they don't take any action.
Um, that's a great answer. So basically, entrepreneurs need to go about in order to get good supplier and also to grow their business in other countries. In your case, can you explain more in detail and how did the COVID-19 affect your business? Like, for example, did you also change your business strategy or did you close some of your business in supporting other profitable business that you own?
Sure, and for my cases, I definitely suffer from COVID-19. Because of COVID-19, some of our business did not get any profit, which is much needed in order to make sure the business runs effectively. I did change my business strategy. For example, now I focus more on making my business via online mode because many people cannot go stores physically, which tend to make people involved to the internet. For my business, for some of my business that cannot be able made and online, I tend to close the business temporarily in order to support more on the online business.
Oh, now I see. To add another question, Mrs. Divyasri, as an entrepreneur, you might have some business store that sells items that cannot be found in Malaysia. For instance, in a food chain business, you might put on sale some spices that need to be imported from the other countries. How did you manage to make your business stay open during the COVID-19 when it's hard to import stocks from the countries?
As I mentioned earlier, and as an entrepreneur, we are required to go about in order to get good supplier and we also need to visit our store if we open it other countries. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, many countries has already closed their boats just so they can avoid the spread of the dead virus. This has caused us entrepreneurs to lose our suppliers and goods. Yeah, many entrepreneurs need to close their business because they do not have enough items to make their business gain profit. But some of the entrepreneurs, they have a certain way to get their items from other countries. They still can make their business ongoing, but not for so long because the items may be pricey or do not get any profit from it. To make the business active, they need to reduce their selling in a day in order to avoid running out of the items from other countries.
Well, that was a good explanation from you, Mrs. Divyasri. Can you also explain how some of the entrepreneurs that honor travel agency companies, how did their companies operate during the COVID-19?
Okay, in these cases, I only have two explanation, which is by completely shutting down the business or temporarily closing the business. For entrepreneurs that choose to fully close their business, they can start to divide the money that were used in closed business and move the money to the more profitable business that they own. For a temporary closure, the business entrepreneurs need to bear the loss of profit and continue in the way. This is because entrepreneurs also need to pay their workers' wages, shop rent, and many more.
It's a good answer. So basically, entrepreneurs that own travel agency companies need to choose either to permanently close their business or close the business temporarily. So thank you for the answer, Mrs. Divyasri. Next up, we are going to ask server questionnaire to foreigner, also known as a Malaysia tourist. So how about you, Mr. Sherwin? How do you think foreigners can get affected by the COVID-19 pandemic, or in other words, the impacts faced by them?
Thank you for the question, Anand. So we have a negative impact. I can say that let you know the foreigners are the immigrants, labor market outcomes in expanding still further by the effect that they are roughly over present in those certain sector most affected by the pandemic till date. For example, in a particularly hard in its industry filled with the hospitality and quarter of the employees in a UE and foreigner born twice their share in overall employment.
Now that's well explained. Okay, moving on, how COVID-related mortality rates for migrants could be also significant, exceeding those of the native-born population.
That is a tricky yet brilliant question asked. Accordingly, foreigners are potentially in a more prostituted or vulnerable position in a labor market due to the low stable employment condition and a lower seniority of the job. Okay, studies also suggest an discrimination strongly increase in the time of a slack labor market while a networks of a contract of which migrants have a fewer become more relevant for finding a job.
Perhaps a very clear explanation for a tricky question. Great job, Mr. Shavin. In a nutshell of question for you, as a piece on the other hand itself, what are the thoughts on the travel restrictions?
As a tourist, my thoughts on a travel restriction are that in a number of the world's cities, the journey describability when done with the aid of using 80 to 90% conflicting and journey of the neutrality regulations happen locally and lots of visitor sites across the world, including museums, leisure parks, and sport activities venues, where they close UNWTO has also pronounced as a 60% drop in a global visitors arrivals within a site. The first of six months of 2020, air passengers journey confirmed and a comparable decline.
A very clear explanation. Thanks, Mr. Shavin. Just importantly, COVID-19 pandemic has affected many people, whether they are in the travel industry or other side of the job. As we have come to the end of our podcast, I'd like to convey a big thank you to our guest, which is Mr. Arvinesh, Mr. Divyasri, and Mr. Shavin for attending this podcast. Not to forget, thank you to our fellow listeners who took time and listened till the end. I hope we keep you entertained till the end. Stay tuned and wait for the next episode of our favorite podcast. Sign off with me, Anand. Thank you.